Hey everyone, time to read another chapter from Awareness Through Movement by Moshe Feldenkrais. This chapter is called The Direction of Progress. Every man has two worlds, a personal world of his own and the external world common to us all. In my personal world, the universe and all living things exist only as long as I live. My world is born with me and dies and disappears together with me. In the great world we all share, I am no more than a drop of water in the sea or grain of sand in the desert. My life and death hardly affect the great world at all. The aim of a man in life is his private affair up to a point. One man dreams of happiness, another of wealth, a third of power, fourth of knowledge or justice, and still others of equality. But we do not even begin to know the purpose of mankind as such. The only idea that has a reasonable basis and that is accepted by all the sciences is that there is a direction in the development of living creatures, and that man stands at the top of the ladder of this development. This direction of evolution may also be interpreted as its purpose. We saw this purpose in detailing the structures of our own nervous system in the previous chapter. There, the direction of development was towards increasing the capacity of awareness to direct older processes and actions developed during earlier evolutionary periods, to increase their variety, to inhibit them, or to speed them up. We ourselves realize this trend inadvertently when we observe that some artist or scientist may be very able, but that there is something missing that would make him fully human. Consciousness and awareness. All the more highly developed animals have a considerable amount of consciousness. They know the surroundings in which they live and their place within the family, group, herd, or flock. They can cooperate for the defense of the family or herd and even help a member of their tribe, which means that they perhaps recognize what is good for their neighbor. Man is endowed with not only a more highly developed consciousness, but with a specific capacity for abstraction, which enables him to discriminate and to know what is happening within him when he uses this power. Thus, he may know whether he does or does not know something. He can tell whether he does or does not understand something he knows. He is capable of a still higher form of abstraction that enables him to estimate his power of abstraction and the extent to which he uses it. He can tell whether he is using his full powers of awareness in order to know, and whether he realizes that he does not know something. There is an essential difference between consciousness and awareness, although the borders are not clear in our use of language. I could walk up the stairs of my house fully conscious of what I am doing, and yet not know how many steps I have climbed. In order to know how many there are, I must climb them a second time, pay attention, listen to myself, and count them. Awareness is consciousness together with a realization of what is happening within it, or of what is going on within ourselves while we are conscious. Many people find it easy to be aware of control of their voluntary muscles, thought, and abstraction processes. It is much more difficult, on the other hand, to be aware and in control of the involuntary muscles, senses, emotions, and creative abilities. Despite this difficulty, it is by no means impossible, even though this seems unlikely to many. We act as a whole entity, even when this wholeness is not quite perfect. From this springs the possibility of also developing awareness control in the more difficult parts. The changes that occur in the parts where control is easy also affect the rest of the system, including those parts over which we have no direct power. Indirect influence is also a kind of control. Our work is a method of training that converts this initial indirect influence into clear knowledge. It should perhaps be made explicit at this point that we are speaking of the training of willpower and self-control, but not for the purpose of gaining power over ourselves or over other people. Correction of the self, improvement, training of awareness, and other concepts have been used here to describe various aspects of the idea of development. Development stresses the harmonious coordination between structure, function, and achievement. And a basic condition for harmonious coordination is complete freedom from either self-compulsion or compulsion from others. Normal development, in general, is harmonious. In development, the parts grow, improve, and strengthen in such a way that the whole can continue towards its general destination. And just as new functions appear in the course of a child's harmonious development and growth, so do new powers appear in any harmonious development. Harmonious development is not a simple matter. Let us take, for instance, abstract thought, which at first sight seems to be wholly an advantage concerning harmonious development. However, it also has many disadvantages. Abstraction is the basis of verbalization. Words symbolize the meanings they describe and could not be created without the abstraction of the quality or character of the thing represented. It is difficult to imagine any human culture whatsoever without words. Abstract thought and verbalization occupy the most important place in science and in all social achievement. But at the same time, abstraction and verbalization become a tyrant who deprives the individual of concrete reality. This in turn causes severe disturbances in the harmony of most human activities. Frequently, the degree of disturbance borders on mental and physical illness and causes premature senility. As verbal abstraction becomes more successful and more efficient, man's thinking and imagination become further estranged from his feelings, senses, and even movements. We have seen that the structures used for thinking are loosely linked with those housing feeling. Clear thought is born only in the absence of strong feelings that distort objectivity. Thus, a necessary condition for the development of effective thinking is continuous withdrawal from feelings and proprioceptive sensations. Nevertheless, harmonious development remains more important to the individual than discordant development, even if effective thinking is the disturbing factor. Thinking that is cut off from the rest of the man gradually becomes arid. Thought that proceeds mainly in words does not draw substance from the processes of the older evolutionary structures that are closely tied to feelings. Creative, spontaneous thought must maintain a link with the early brain structures. Abstract thought that is not nourished from time to time from deeper sources within us becomes a fabric of words alone, empty of all genuine human content. Many books of art and science, literature and poetry have nothing to offer except a succession of words linked together by logical argument. They have no personal content. This also applies to many individuals in their daily relationships with others. Thinking that does not develop harmoniously with the rest of man becomes an obstacle to his proper development. It may seem to be a somewhat trivial conclusion that harmonious development is a desirable thing. As long as we consider only the abstraction and logical content of this phrase, it will remain divorced from the whole man, like any other piece of logical verbalization, without practical significance. This trivial phrase will, however, become an unlimited source of forms, figures, and relationships that make new combinations and discoveries possible only when we stimulate our emotions and senses and direct impressions. That is, when we think in images in our varied mental combinations. It is these that must be clothed in words in order to establish human contact with our fellows. Harmonious development is found in every creature whose species has a long history. This kind of development is accompanied by many difficulties in the case of man because of the relative newness of awareness in the evolutionary ladder. The harmonious development of animals, anthropoids, and of the earliest man requires senses, feelings, movement, and only a minimum of thought, which is memory, and a little consciousness, all that is necessary to make the waking condition different from sleep. Animals without awareness wander here and there without any further significance. When awareness appeared on the evolutionary ladder in man, a simple movement in one direction became a turn to the left, in the other direction, a turn to the right. It is difficult for us to appreciate the significance of this fact. It seems a simple matter to us, just as the power of seeing seems simple to our eyes. But a little thought will show us that, in fact, the power to differentiate between right and left is no less complicated than sight. When man differentiates between right and left, he divides space with respect to himself, taking himself as the center from which this space extends. This sense of a division in space, which is not yet altogether clear in our awareness, is often expressed as on the right hand and on the left hand. This provides a further abstraction in the concepts of right and left that can thus now be expressed in words. In time, the symbols become increasingly abstract, and it becomes possible to construct such sentences as this one. To achieve a tiny step forward in awareness, such as the understanding of right and left, man must at one time have paid attention as he moved, alternately to what went on inside him and in the world outside. This shifting of the attention, inward and outward, creates abstractions and words that describe the shift in the position of his personal world relative to the outer world. Clearly, the development of this awareness is bound up with considerable birth pangs, and the first glimmerings of awareness must have bewildered our ancestors many times. Owing to its newness in an evolutionary sense, the degree of awareness differs greatly between different individuals, far more than the relative distribution of other faculties. Further, there are also great periodic variations in the individual's awareness and its value relative to other aspects of his personality. There may be a low point at which awareness may disappear momentarily or for a period. More rarely, there may be a high point at which there is a harmonious unity, with all man's capacities fused into a single whole. In the esoteric schools of thought, a Tibetan parable is told. According to the story, a man without awareness is like a carriage whose passengers are the desires, with the muscles for horses, while the carriage itself is the skeleton. Awareness is the sleeping coachman. As long as the coachman remains asleep, the carriage will be dragged aimlessly here and there. Each passenger seeks a different destination and the horses pull different ways. But when the coachman is wide awake and holds the reins, the horses will pull the carriage and bring every passenger to his proper destination. In those moments when awareness succeeds in being at one with feelings, senses, movement, and thought, the carriage will speed along on the right road. Then man can make discoveries, invent, create, innovate, and know. He grasps that his small world and the great world around are but one, and that in this unity, he is no longer alone. Okay, so that's the chapter, The Direction of Progress, and this is, in fact, the end of part 1 of the book. So part 2 includes the actual awareness through movement lessons, and there's some preliminary stuff in there, and at this moment, I don't actually know if I'm going to read through the rest of the book and take you through all of the lessons. Or not. But this first section has really laid out some of the thinking behind the method. Even within the lessons, there's a lot of material separate from going through the movement processes, which is very valuable to the background thinking of the Feldenkrais method. But even if we end up stopping here, I hope that what you've learned from following through these videos up to this point is that the practice of the Feldenkrais method, while it is, in fact, something you could describe as a movement practice, there is a lot going on in thinking behind why the movement practice is put together the way it is, involving these 4 ideas of movement, thinking, sensing, and feeling. And so that practice, it really has a component that we could call the cultivation of wisdom. Thanks so much for listening to this point. I am actually going to do a video where I do a commentary on the text I just read, this last section of part 1 of the book, and then we'll see whether we go on to read through all the lessons together or not. But in any case, I'll be putting out more material related to Feldenkrais method on this channel. So thanks for watching up to this point, and hope to see you again soon.